The air in the grand dining room of the mansion felt heavy, thick enough to be suffocating. Jessa stood perfectly still, a silent statue amidst the quiet celebration. As her parents, beaming with a pride she had never seen directed at her, raised their crystal glasses. The light from the chandelier caught the expensive liquid, making it sparkle like liquid gold. To Cora, her mother said, her voice ringing with pure adoration, "Our brilliant, successful daughter, who deserves every single cent of this wonderful gift. She is the future of this family." Her father nodded in enthusiastic agreement, his eyes fixed only on his elder daughter. Following their toast, the family lawyer, a man in a stiff suit who seemed to be a permanent fixture in their lives, slid a sleek, dark leather folder across the polished mahogany table. It stopped perfectly in front of Cora. With a triumphant little smile, Cora opened it. Inside, nestled on rich paper, was a transfer deed, a document that silently screamed its value. $6.5 million. A gift to launch her luxury brand into the stratosphere. A cold, sharp twist began in Jessa's stomach, a feeling like ice and metal coiling in her gut. The cheerful sounds of the room, the clinking of glasses and her mother's happy sighs, seemed to fade into a distant buzz. "What about me?" The question escaped her lips as a quiet whisper, barely disturbing the air. Yet it felt like the loudest scream she had ever uttered. It was a plea for acknowledgement, a tiny cry to be seen. Her father didn't even grant her a glance. His gaze remained on Cora, his golden child. He answered her question as if she were a minor inconvenience, a fly to be swatted away. "You're strong, Jessa," he said, his tone dismissive. "You're good at earning your own money. That's your talent." The words were meant to sound like a compliment, but they landed like stones, heavy and cruel, reinforcing her role as the family workhorse, not its treasure. In the corner of the vast room, partially hidden by the heavy velvet curtains, no one noticed the old man standing by the window. Grandpa Nalu, silent and frail in body, but sharp in mind, had been watching everything unfold. His eyes, which missed nothing, found Jessa's across the room. As their gazes locked, he gave her the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't a gesture of pity, but of understanding. It was a secret signal, a silent promise that the scales of justice, so terribly unbalanced in this house, would not remain so forever. That tiny movement was the beginning of a storm, a quiet hurricane that was brewing just over the horizon, ready to change everything. Jessa was the kind of daughter who had learned early on that her needs were secondary. She never asked for much, because asking only ever led to disappointment. She was the family's silent fixer. She was the one who stayed up until 3 in the morning helping her father untangle a disastrous accounting error. Her efforts rewarded with a distracted pat on the head. She was the one who supported her sister through every failed project and dramatic heartbreak, offering a steady shoulder and quiet advice that was always taken but never acknowledged. She did everything quietly, in the shadows, while Cora, her older, beautiful sister, lived her life in the full blaze of the sun. Cora always, without exception, got the best of everything. The newest phone was in her hand the day it was released. Her closet overflowed with designer dresses, many worn only once. The sleek, new convertible in the driveway was hers. Their parents adored her, their love for her, a loud, public performance. They called her their golden child, their shining star. Cora was just born for success, her mother would often say to friends, gesturing proudly at her daughter. Some people just have that spark. Jessa never complained. She held on to the belief that love wasn't something you could measure in dollars or designer labels. She thought love was about being seen, about being valued for who you were, not what you were given. But in the cold, opulent halls of her family's house, being quiet didn't make you noble. It made you invisible. Her silence was mistaken for contentment. Her strength was used as an excuse to ignore her. One bright Tuesday morning, Jessa was walking past the living room when she heard her parents' voices, hushed but excited. They were selling a significant portion of their company shares, a part of the business their father had inherited from Grandpa Nalu. The purpose was to generate a massive cash injection for Cora, enough to start her own luxury fashion brand. Jessa stood frozen by the door, her heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against her ribs. "It's only fair," she heard her mother say, her voice filled with conviction. "Cora has the vision and the charisma. She will bring honor and prestige to this family name." Her father nodded. "Exactly. Think of it as an investment in our future. Her success will be our success." Jessa waited, holding her breath, listening for any mention of her own name. She hoped for a small comment, perhaps. "And we'll make sure Jessa is taken care of too, or we must remember what Jessa contributes." But her name was never spoken. She was a ghost in her own home. Her future not even a footnote in the grand plans being laid for her sister. Later that day, she gathered her courage and asked her father about the sale. He smiled at her, a placid, untroubled smile that made her stomach churn. "Oh, that," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "Sweetheart, you're so strong and smart. You don't need that kind of help. You know how to stand on your own 2 feet, earning your own money, that's what you're good at." Those words, meant to be placating, cut deeper than any angry shout ever could. They didn't just dismiss her, they defined her, trapping her in a role she had never chosen. They had no idea, no concept, of the profound hurt they were inflicting. That night, at the celebratory dinner, Cora was glowing, basking in the spotlight of her family's adoration. The table was a scene of perfect happiness, filled with loud laughter, the cheerful clinking of glasses, and smiles that stretched from ear to ear. Jessa sat among them, a perfect actress, her own smile carefully painted on her face. But inside, she felt a vast, echoing emptiness. She looked from her mother's proud face to her father's beaming one, then to her sister's radiant smile, and she realized with chilling clarity that all of her love, all of her tireless hard work, all of her quiet sacrifices, meant nothing. They were invisible. After the celebration ended, Jessa went to her room and lay on her bed, staring at the blank ceiling for hours. The silence of the house was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. She thought of all the countless times she had been the family's backbone. The time she had single-handedly salvaged Cora's final university project after Cora had spent the week partying. The time she had worked for 48 hours straight to fix a critical supply chain mistake her father had made, saving his company from a major loss. She had supported everyone, always, without ever asking for a simple thank you. Now, they had handed her sister millions on a silver platter, and all Jessa received was a patronizing reminder to earn her own way. That night, for the first time, she didn't cry. The sadness was too deep for tears. She just sat in the profound silence of her room, feeling a heavy, crushing ache in her chest. She finally understood. It didn't matter how much she gave, how much she sacrificed, or how hard she worked. It would never be enough for them. They had already chosen their favorite, and she was not it. And even though she had smiled and said congratulations to Cora, something deep inside of her, something essential, broke quietly, like a pane of glass cracking silently under unbearable pressure. A month later, a grand family dinner was hosted to celebrate Cora's latest achievement. She had just opened another branch of her luxury brand, and the house was a beacon of opulence, glowing with expensive decorations and filled with the scent of a feast. Roasted meat, creamy soups, and desserts that were miniature works of art filled every corner. Laughter and cheerful chatter echoed through the dining room, but Jessa wasn't there to hear it up close. Her chair at the magnificent table was empty. She was sitting outside on the cold stone steps, a lone figure in the dark, looking at the distant, indifferent stars. Through the large glass windows, she could see the party as if it were a movie. She could hear everything: the tinkling of glasses, the bursts of laughter, and her father's proud, booming voice as he raised his glass. "Let's raise a toast to Cora, our shining star, the pride and joy of our family." A chorus of applause and cheers followed. Jessa managed a sad, watery smile, a single tear finally escaping and tracing a cold path down her cheek. Not a single person had noticed her absence. Not her mother, so wrapped up in her favored daughter's success. Not her father, who saw only the reflection of his own ambition in Cora. And not even her sister. She remembered when they were little girls, how she had always stood by Cora's side, her biggest cheerleader, helping her study, fixing her mistakes, even covering for her lies. She had done all of it out of a deep, unconditional love, but now, it was painfully clear that love had never been a two-way street. To her parents, she was simply part of the background scenery of Cora's brilliant life, the quiet, reliable shadow who never demanded attention and could therefore be safely ignored. As she listened to them laugh and boast about Cora's supposed hard work, something heavy and cold settled in her chest. Jessa had worked harder than anyone in that house, but her efforts were invisible because they didn't come with glitter, fame, or a flashy brand name. Her mother's voice, filled with emotion, broke through her thoughts. "We're so incredibly proud of you, Cora. You have made all of our dreams come true." Jessa looked down at her own capable hands, hands that had fixed so many of their problems, and whispered to the night, "And I was never a part of those dreams." Long after the last guest had departed and the house fell into a deep silence, Jessa walked back inside. Her footsteps were silent on the cold marble floor. She paused at the dining table, a battlefield of celebration's aftermath. Plates were still half full, champagne glasses half empty, She could almost hear the ghosts of their laughter fading into the air. She looked around the vast, beautiful house she had once considered her home, but it no longer felt like hers. It was a museum dedicated to her sister's success. Without a word to anyone, she went to her room and opened her wardrobe. Slowly, methodically, she began packing her clothes into a small worn suitcase. She folded each shirt neatly, her hands steady despite the slight tremor she felt inside. When she was finished, she stood by the window one last time. The cool night breeze touched her face as she whispered a final farewell to the life she was leaving behind. If they won't see my worth here, I'll go somewhere they will. Then she zipped her bag shut, took one long, deep breath, and walked silently out of the house, leaving behind the family that had never truly seen her at all. The next morning, Jessa woke up in a small, sparse apartment. The room was filled with a quiet, unfamiliar peace, with thin slivers of sunlight peeking through the cheap curtains. She had left her home without telling a soul, carrying only a small bag and a heart that felt both heavy with loss and light with a strange new freedom. She didn't know what would come next, what the future held, but she knew with absolute certainty that she couldn't stay in a place where she wasn't valued. She was making tea in the tiny kitchenette when a firm knock sounded at the door. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Standing there was Grandpa Nalu. He looked older than she remembered, his silver hair glowing like a halo in the morning light, but his eyes were still as sharp and kind as ever. Jessa quickly wiped a stray tear from her face. "Grandpa, what are you doing here?" He didn't answer right away. He stepped inside, his gaze taking in the small space, the bare walls, the few pieces of second-hand furniture, the half-unpacked suitcase on the floor. He didn't look disappointed or pitying. He just nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew deep down. Finally, he spoke, his voice gentle. "You left quietly. That tells me you've had enough." Jessa lowered her eyes, unable to meet his knowing gaze. "I just needed some peace, Grandpa," she whispered, the words thick with unspoken pain. He offered a faint, wise smile. "Peace is good," he said softly, "but purpose is better." He then looked straight into her eyes, his gaze intense. "Sometimes the quiet one is the one who carries the real legacy. Come with me." Jessa hesitated, a wave of uncertainty washing over her. "Grandpa, I don't even know where I belong anymore," she confessed, her voice small. He placed a comforting, steady hand on her shoulder. "Then let's find out." Together, they drove for hours, leaving the clamor and chaos of the city far behind. The tall, imposing buildings gradually gave way to sprawling trees, and the busy streets turned into winding dirt roads. Finally, they stopped in front of a wide, old estate surrounded by vast green fields and tall, swaying palm trees. The place had an air of peaceful strength, of history and resilience. Much like the man sitting beside her, Jessa stepped out of the car, taking a deep breath of the fresh, clean air. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice filled with awe. Grandpa Nalu smiled, a deep, proud smile. "This is the beginning," he said. "This is where I built everything your parents now own. Every brick, every field, every single idea for the company started right here." He led her through the sprawling fields, showing her the old workshop filled with dusty tools, the large, sturdy barns, and the simple quarters where the workers lived. "Your father learned the mechanics of business from me," he said, his voice tinged with a hint of sadness, "but he forgot the values that are supposed to be the foundation. He learned about numbers and profits, but not about purpose and people." Jessa listened quietly, deeply touched by his honesty and his faith in her. Then, he turned to her, his expression serious. "I want to see who truly deserves what I built. I will not decide based on words or family favorites, but by actions." Something stirred inside Jessa, a feeling she hadn't felt in years. It was hope, mixed with a healthy dose of fear. "You mean, you want me to work here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He nodded, his eyes unwavering. "Yes, but not as my granddaughter. You will start as just another worker, as someone who wants to build something real and lasting. There will be no fancy clothes, no special gifts, no shortcuts. Just hard work and honesty." Jessa looked out at the old estate again. It wasn't just land and buildings. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to forge her own identity. She nodded slowly, a newfound determination solidifying within her. "I'll do it, Grandpa." He smiled, a proud and quiet smile that was worth more to her than all the praise her parents had ever given Cora. For the first time in a very long while, Jessa felt seen, not for what she had lost or who she was related to, but for the potential of who she could become. For the next 2 years, Jessa's life was completely transformed. She was no longer the quiet, invisible girl sitting at the edge of a glittering dinner table. She became a worker, her body growing strong, her mind determined, and her spirit focused. At Grandpa Nolu's estate, there were no luxuries. Every morning, she woke up before the sun, pulled on simple, practical clothes, tied her hair back, and joined the other workers in the fields. She learned to drive a tractor, to manage irrigation schedules, and to identify the signs of a healthy crop. She carried heavy boxers, meticulously checked inventory records, managed shipping deliveries, and learned the intricate details of how every small part of the large estate operated. It was grueling, backbreaking work, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she was a part of something truly meaningful. She was building, not just maintaining. Grandpa Nolu never treated her like she was special. He gave her no shortcuts and assigned her the toughest tasks. He simply watched her, a silent observer, quietly noting how she handled every challenge thrown her way. When a critical piece of farm equipment broke down during the harvest, Jessa didn't panic. She spent all night with the mechanic, learning how to fix it herself. When a key supplier unexpectedly backed out of a contract, she spent days on the phone, finding a better one at a fairer price. When some of the older, more experienced workers refused to take orders from her because she was young, female, and new, she didn't demand respect. She earned it, working alongside them, proving through her tireless effort that she was one of them. Bit by bit, she learned everything there was to know about farming, production, and the complex world of export. The old estate had a small export business that had been neglected for years, barely turning a profit. Jessa saw its hidden potential. She started rebuilding it from the ground up, beginning with repairing the damaged storage units. She single-handedly reorganized the chaotic accounting books, created new, efficient systems for tracking orders, and reached out to old clients who had been ignored for years, rebuilding their trust with honesty and reliability. Slowly but surely, the profits began to return. The workers started to trust her ideas and her leadership. They could see she wasn't there just to give orders. She worked harder and longer than anyone else. Even when she made mistakes, she took full responsibility, learned from them quickly, and never blamed others. Grandpa Nolu watched her entire transformation from a distance. He rarely spoke to her about her progress, never offering a word of praise or a word of criticism. Sometimes, in her moments of exhaustion, Jessa wondered if he even noticed her monumental efforts. But deep down, she understood. This was his test. It wasn't a test with a clear beginning or end, but one he had quietly and cleverly designed. He wanted to see who she truly was when no one was watching, when there was no reward waiting at the finish line. While Jessa was toiling in silence, building something real and sustainable, her sister Cora's life looked perfect from the outside. Her social media was a carefully curated fantasy of luxury trips, expensive handbags, and glamorous parties. The world called her a boss lady, and her parents continued to brag about her incredible success to anyone who would listen. But behind the camera's lens, the glittering facade was beginning to crack. Rumors started to circulate online about Cora's brand not paying its investors. Shipments were constantly delayed. Disgruntled customers began complaining about poor quality, and whispers of missing money grew louder. Jessa heard the gossip from the other workers who followed the news. She didn't smile or feel a sense of vindictive pleasure. She just kept working, her focus unwavering. Her journey wasn't about revenge or comparison. It was about her own growth. She had finally learned a profound lesson. Real success doesn't need to be constantly shown off. It builds itself quietly, with a foundation of integrity and hard work. And though her grandpa never said it aloud, every time he looked at Jessa from across the vast, green fields, there was a deep pride in his eyes. A pride he kept hidden, waiting for the right moment to finally reveal it to the world. The news came like a sudden, violent storm. Cora's company, once the shining star of fashion blogs and magazines, collapsed overnight. The headlines were brutal. Luxury brand implodes amid allegations of tax fraud. Investors sue heiress for millions. Fake invoices and deception. The truth behind the glamour. Her glamorous world crumbled into dust. The same online followers who had once showered her with praise now mocked her mercilessly. Her chic luxury brand stores were shut down, their windows dark and empty. Her business partners, once so eager to be associated with her, pulled out, and her reputation was utterly destroyed. She tried to hide it at first, posting old photos from glamorous vacations to make it seem like everything was normal. But the truth was a tidal wave that couldn't be stopped. Her parents were in a state of shock. For years, they had placed their complete and blind trust in Cora, bragging about her Midas touch to anyone who would listen. Now, all their immense pride curdled into a bitter mix of anger and fear. They were terrified that their precious family name would be irreparably ruined. Their phones began to ring off the hook calls from furious bankers, determined lawyers, and persistent reporters, all asking questions they couldn't possibly answer. Their once peaceful, orderly mansion became a place of chaos, filled with shouting, accusations, and blame. In the middle of this catastrophic mess, they thought of only one person who could possibly fix it. Jessa, their mother called her, a voice shaking but still laced with its usual tone of authority. "Jessa, your sister is in terrible trouble. She needs your help," she said, without any preamble. "You've always been the one who fixes things. Fix this, too." Jessa listened quietly on the other end of the line. Her heart ached, not with surprise, but with a weary sense of resignation. She had seen this coming from miles away. Still, hearing the desperate plea from her mother's mouth felt heavy. When she asked what, exactly, they wanted from her, her father took the phone. "Use your savings, your business, whatever you've managed to build out there. We need to save the family image," he demanded, his voice strained with panic. "Cora is your sister." Jessa took a long, deep breath before she replied, her voice remarkably calm and steady. "You told me to earn my own money," she said, her words clear and precise. "And I did, but I worked for every single penny of it. You gave her millions, and she squandered it. Now you want me to use what I built with my own hands to clean up the mess she made." There was a stunned silence on the other end. Her mother took the phone back, trying a different tactic. "She made mistakes, Jessa, but she's family." Jessa closed her eyes, the image of her empty chair at the dinner table flashing in her mind. "So am I," she whispered, the words holding the weight of years of neglect. "But you only remember that when you need saving." Then, she hung up. That night, she sat on the porch of the old farmhouse on Grandpa's estate, watching the brilliant stars scattered across the dark sky. She thought about her parents, about how in 2 years, they had never once called just to ask if she was okay. They only called when they needed her strength. She thought about Cora, who had once scoffed at her and told her to work harder when Jessa had dared to ask for a small loan years ago. And now, Cora was the one drowning in a sea of her own making. Jessa didn't celebrate their downfall. She didn't laugh or feel a single drop of vengeful satisfaction. But she also knew she wouldn't be going back. She had spent years painstakingly building a new life from nothing, earning her respect, her independence, and her peace. She wasn't going to throw it all away to fix what others had so carelessly destroyed with their arrogance and greed. The next morning, she sent a short, simple text message to her parents. "I hope you all find the peace you are looking for. I have already found mine." It was short, but it said everything that needed to be said. Jessa had finally learned the hardest and most important lesson of all. Sometimes the only way to truly save yourself is to stop trying to save those who never valued you in the first place. A month later, Grandpa Nalu called for a formal family meeting. The entire family gathered at his estate, all of them assuming it was to discuss a strategy for dealing with Cora's mounting legal troubles. The air in the grand hall of the old house was thick with tension. Cora arrived, dressed in an elegant but subdued outfit, a desperate attempt to hide her deep-seated worry behind a fragile, forced smile. Their parents were visibly anxious, whispering frantically to each other about how to best protect the family name. Jessa came quietly, dressed as simply as always, carrying herself with a calm, unshakable confidence. She had no idea what her grandfather had planned, but after everything she had been through, she felt ready for anything. The family sat around the enormous oak table in the grand hall, the walls lined with old faded paintings and heavy velvet curtains. Grandpa Nalu sat at the head of the table, his face serious but calm. The family lawyer stood beside him, holding a large, imposing folder. Everyone expected a stern lecture, a plan to bail Cora out, or perhaps instructions on how to liquidate assets to save the failing family business. Finally, "Some good news for Cora, I hope," their mother whispered to their father. Jessa remained silent, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The lawyer slowly opened the folder and cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the silent room. Everyone leaned in, their attention fixed on him. He carefully spread a set of official-looking papers on the table. "Grandpa Nalu has made a final decision regarding the future of his estate," the lawyer began, his voice formal and devoid of emotion. "After careful and lengthy consideration, he has decided to transfer the entirety of his wealth, which is currently valued at $28 million, to his granddaughter, Jess." The room froze. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of it. Cora's eyes went wide with disbelief. Her mother let out a small, strangled gasp. Her father's face turned a ghostly shade of pale. Jessa blinked, the words slowly sinking in. $28 million. All of it hers. She hadn't expected it, not in her wildest dreams, but somehow, it felt right. She had worked for this. She had earned the respect. She had built herself up from the ground, proving her worth time and time again. This wasn't charity, it was recognition. Cora's hands began to tremble. What? Grandpa, why? She stammered, her voice shaking uncontrollably. Their mother jumped to her feet. This can't be right. He can't do this. Jessa doesn't deserve this. Over Cora. Grandpa Nolu's voice cut through the rising chaos, calm but firm as steel. I built this estate and this wealth with values, not with favoritism, he declared, his eyes scanning each of their faces. Jessa worked, she learned, and she proved that she has the strength and the integrity to carry my legacy. She earned it. Cora was given money easily, and she squandered not just the money, but all the lessons I ever tried to teach her. Jessa's face remained serene. She didn't gloat or smile. She simply sat there, feeling a profound mix of relief and quiet, personal triumph. For so many years, she had been invisible in her own family, constantly overlooked and underestimated. Now, in this one stunning moment, without her having to say a single word, her life had been changed forever. The lawyer continued, his voice steady. This transfer is final and legally binding. All assets, properties, and investments under Grandpa Nolu's name now belong solely and entirely to Jessa. The room erupted in a flurry of whispers, arguments, and shocked gasps. Jessa finally looked at her family, her voice calm and clear. I don't want anything from anyone else. I earned this the hard way, and I will honor it the right way. Grandpa Nolu nodded, a small, proud smile finally appearing on his lips. For the very first time, Jessa felt the full, wonderful weight of recognition, not from empty words or hollow applause, but from the unwavering trust of the one man who had always seen her when no one else did. Her father couldn't believe what he was hearing. His face was flushed a deep, angry red, his hands trembling as he pointed a shaking finger at Jessa. You manipulated him. You used your pathetic sob story to win him over, he shouted, his voice echoing through the grand hall. He began to pace back and forth, his mind reeling, his anger mixing with a rising tide of panic. You didn't earn this. You made him feel sorry for you, and now he's giving you everything we worked for. Their mother stood frozen, her mouth hanging open, completely unsure of what to say or do. Cora's eyes filled with tears, a messy cocktail of anger, frustration, and utter disbelief. Grandpa, please, it's not fair. I worked for this, too, she cried, her voice breaking as she looked from her grandfather to Jessa. Her expression pleading. Jessa remained perfectly calm. She didn't shout back, she didn't cry, and she didn't feel the need to defend herself. She knew the truth. She had worked day in and day out, in the dirt and the sun, earning respect one grueling task at a time. She had learned everything from the ground up, building something real and tangible with her own two hands. Nothing had come easy, and she had never once asked for help that wasn't freely offered. She had never taken a single shortcut, never relied on charm or pity. Grandpa Nolu finally stood up, his old frame straightened, and his voice, though not loud, carried an immense weight of authority. Enough, he said. The room fell instantly silent. She earned every single cent of this with sweat, not with tears. While Cora was spending and posting pictures, Jessa was building and learning. I know who truly carries my legacy. He then turned his steely gaze to his son, Jessa's father. You think money is what makes a person worthy. You think giving and taking are the cornerstones of success. You are wrong. Real strength comes from patience, from hard work, and from integrity. Jessa possesses all of those things in abundance. Cora was given the wealth, but she completely wasted the lessons I tried so hard to teach her. Her father's anger faltered, replaced by a wave of shock and shame. He opened his mouth to argue, but his grandfather's unwavering stare stopped him. It wasn't just authority. It was the quiet, undeniable power of truth. Jessa felt a small warm glow spread in her chest. For years, she had been invisible to her parents, overlooked and underestimated at every turn. Now, in this room, she was not only seen but acknowledged and respected, not for luck or charm, but for her unwavering dedication. Cora sank into her chair, her face pale. Her immense pride finally shattered into a million pieces. She had always believed that wealth and appearances were all that mattered, but now she understood, far too late, that character and honesty mattered more than any amount of money or luxury. Jessa didn't gloat. She only watched quietly, letting the truth of the moment speak for itself. Grandpa Nalu turned to Jessa and nodded, his eyes filled with a deep respect. You have proven yourself beyond any doubt. You are the one who can carry forward everything I have built. Jessa's heart swelled, not with a sense of triumph over her sister, but with a profound feeling of relief and pride. She had waited her entire life for this kind of recognition, and finally, it had come, not from her parents' approval, but from the man whose wise eyes had always seen her true worth. The confrontation ended not with shouting or tears, but with a quiet, undeniable truth hanging in the air. Jessa had earned her place, and no argument, no jealousy, and no false claim of pity could ever take that away from her. After the meeting, Cora's pride completely broke. She ran after Jessa as she walked toward the estate gardens, her expensive heels clicking frantically on the stone path. Tears streamed down her face, smudging her carefully applied makeup, and her voice trembled with desperation. Please, Jessa, I've lost everything, she cried, grabbing her sister's arm. Just lend me something. Anything. I promise I'll pay you back. I don't know what to do. Jessa stopped and turned slowly, her eyes steady and clear as she looked at her sister. She didn't speak at first, letting Cora's desperate words sink in the raw desperation. The regret, the sheer terror in her voice. She remembered all the times she had tried to help Cora in the past. When she had offered advice, when she had tried to show her the value of hard work, of respecting people, of managing money and opportunities responsibly. Each and every time, Cora had dismissed her, laughed in her face, or condescendingly told her to try harder in her own life. Jessa's gaze softened for a fleeting moment. But there was no pity in it. Instead, there was clarity, a quiet, unshakable strength that had been forged in the fires of years of hard work, of learning to depend only on herself, of building something real while everyone else was busy chasing appearances. She spoke slowly, her voice calm but firm, each word landing with precision. I begged you for help once, remember, she said. You told me I should try working harder. She held her sister's gaze. So, I did. Cora's hands trembled as she reached toward Jessa again, as if begging for an embrace. But Jessa took a small step back. She didn't raise her voice, didn't argue, didn't offer any excuses. She simply looked at her sister one last time, letting the profound and unalterable truth settle in the space between them. Cora had been given everything: wealth, support, guidance, but she had chosen shortcuts, spending without a care, ignoring every important lesson. Jessa had chosen the hard path, and now she held her own success, her own legacy, and her own peace. For the first time, Cora realized that money wasn't the solution. She couldn't beg her way into the respect she'd never earned, into the lessons she'd never learned, into the hard-won recognition Jessa had built with her own two hands. Her sister's quiet strength was not something that could be bought or borrowed. Jessa turned and began walking away, each step calm and deliberate. Cora remained frozen on the path, tears still running down her cheeks, her voice caught in her throat. Jessa didn't look back. She walked toward the gardens, toward the bright sunlight, toward the beautiful life she had built for herself. She didn't gloat. She didn't mock. She simply moved forward, leaving Cora to finally face the consequences of her own choices. And in that moment, Jessa felt lighter than she ever had before. She had earned everything she had, the hard way, and no plea, no tears, and no amount of regret from her sister could ever change that. She had her freedom, her respect, and her future, and nothing, and no one, could ever take that away from her. Months passed, and Jessa's life transformed completely. She worked tirelessly, pouring her heart and soul into the estate and the export business. She learned every detail, managed every problem, and turned the once neglected enterprise into something strong, respected, and highly profitable. Slowly, she expanded, creating her own brand that honored the core principles Grandpa Nalu had taught her: honesty, hard work, and integrity. Unlike Cora's flashy, fleeting ventures, Jessa's brand focused on quality, trust, and real, tangible value. And people noticed. Serious investors began calling. Respected media outlets wrote glowing stories about her. And soon she became known not just as an heiress, but as the self-made heir, the one who had built her success from the ground up. Her parents, who had once so carelessly ignored her, were stunned. They saw the news articles, the social media posts from admiring customers, and the television interviews praising Jessa for her sharp intelligence, her unwavering dedication, and her quiet courage. The family name, which they had feared was ruined forever by Cora's scandal, was now shining brighter than ever, all because of Jessa. They realized, far too late, that the true heir, The one who carried the family's values, not just its money, had been the one sitting quietly in the shadows all along, watching, learning, and growing. They tried to reach out. The calls, messages, and invitations to dinner became frequent. "We were wrong about everything, Jessa. We want to make things right," her mother said over the phone, her voice soft and pleading. Her father sent long emails filled with apologies and convoluted explanations. They offered support, lavish gifts, and empty promises, hoping to buy their way back into her life. Jessa listened politely but never responded. She had learned the hard way that respect and trust were things to be earned over time, not demanded or bought with 11th-hour apologies. She didn't need their approval to feel complete anymore. She didn't reject them out of anger or a desire for revenge. She simply maintained her boundaries. Her life was finally, completely hers, built with her own hands, her own decisions, and her own sacrifices. She understood now that real power wasn't about controlling others or being recognized by them. It was about knowing her own worth and standing firm in it. Every Sunday, Jessa visited Grandpa Nalu's grave on a peaceful hill overlooking the estate. She would bring fresh flowers from the gardens and sit quietly beside the headstone, speaking softly about her progress, her plans for the future, and how deeply grateful she was for his lessons. She felt his guidance in every decision she made and saw his wisdom reflected in her growing, thriving business. These visits became her sacred ritual, a quiet reminder that her true strength came from the values he had instilled in her, not from the wealth she had inherited. Jessa's life was calm but powerful. She had shifted the very foundation of her family, not with anger or confrontation, but with persistence, dedication, and a quiet, unyielding determination. While her parents and sisters struggled to understand how the invisible girl had become the real heir, Jessa had already moved on, her focus on growth, honor, and the powerful legacy she was now building for herself. She had everything she had ever truly wanted: respect, independence, and the deep, abiding satisfaction of knowing she had earned it all. The night of the prestigious annual business awards ceremony arrived. Jessa stepped onto the stage, a single figure in a sea of bright lights. The crowd watched in silence, waiting for her to speak. She wore a simple dress, elegant but not flashy, and on her wrist, she wore her grandfather's old, simple cup, a tangible reminder of the lessons he had taught her. For a moment, she looked out at the audience, the journalists, the investors, the supporters who had followed her incredible journey. Her heart beat steadily, not from nerves, but from a deep, quiet pride. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "When my family told me to earn my own money, they were right," she said, her voice calm and clear, carrying to every corner of the large hall. "I just wish they had known that strength doesn't grow from wealth. It grows from being left out. It grows in the moments you are overlooked, in the silence when you are not chosen. It is built in the shadows, with hard work that no one sees and sacrifices that no one acknowledges." Every word carried the immense weight of her journey, the years of quiet labor, the silent struggles, and the profound lessons she had learned. The audience listened, captivated, feeling the undeniable truth in her story. As she spoke, memories flashed in her mind. Her parents praising Cora, the lonely dinners where she sat outside, the long, exhausting days working beside her grandpa, the countless nights she spent alone, building her brand from scratch. All of it had led to this single, triumphant moment. She didn't speak to shame her family. She spoke to illuminate a greater truth, that real, lasting success comes from effort, integrity, and resilience. When she finished, there was a moment of profound silence. Then, the entire audience rose to their feet, the room erupting in thunderous applause. People were cheering, some even wiping tears from their eyes. Jessa smiled, a genuine, quiet smile, feeling a deep joy that was all her own. She had earned not just recognition, but respect, the kind that comes only from proving yourself in the hardest way possible. Back at the mansion, Cora sat alone in front of a massive television screen. Frozen, she watched her sister, so confident, so strong, so celebrated by everyone. For the very first time, she realized something that all her money could never buy. The real inheritance Jessa had received wasn't the millions or the estate. It was the respect, the admiration, and the undeniable power of a life built with honesty and effort. Cora's heart sank as the truth, finally, crushingly dawned on her. No amount of wealth in the world could ever replace the incredible strength Jessa had gained by walking her own, difficult path. Jessa stepped down from the stage later, quietly accepting congratulations from friends and mentors. She didn't need to flaunt her success. Her work, her story, and the respect she had earned spoke for her. That night, As she walked back to her car under the starry sky, she felt a calm, deep satisfaction. She had proven herself. She had honored her grandfather's legacy. And she had built a life that was truly, authentically hers. And in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that no one could ever take that away from her.